Good day, monkeys.
Boys.
I'm Eddie Braverman. That's Midas Mulligan Magoo, and this is episode 31 of Not Safe for Work on WallStreetOasis.com. This week there's really only one story, and that is the downgrade of the U.S. credit rating by Standard & Poor's. So let's get rolling. I'm going to go ahead and link to the complete S&P downgrade report below, but the following is word for word from the advisory explaining why the U.S. credit rating was downgraded from AAA to AA+. And I quote, "The downgrade reflects our opinion that the fiscal consolidation plan that Congress and the administration recently agreed to falls short of what, in our view, would be necessary to stabilize the government's medium-term debt dynamics. More broadly, the downgrade reflects our view that the effectiveness, stability, and predictability of American policymaking and political institutions have weakened at a time of ongoing fiscal and economic challenges to a degree more than we envisioned when we assigned a negative outlook to the rating on April 18, 2011. Since then, we have changed our view of the difficulties in bridging the gulf between the political parties over fiscal policy, which makes us pessimistic about the capacity of Congress and the administration to be able to leverage their agreement this week into a broader fiscal consolidation plan that stabilizes the government debt dynamics anytime soon. In other words, the people running your country are a bunch of fucking dimwits who could fuck up a wet dream, and we therefore have no faith that they'll figure any of this shit out in the near term." What do you think, dude? Did they get it right?
I'd sooner say it's a rampant case of schadenfreude than anything else. I mean, this is kind of like your trophy wife coming to you after 10 years of fucking mink coats and Rolls Royces and telling you that, hey, you know, this year's diamond ring is not good enough for me. This is fucking horseshit. The world cannot survive without America. And I'm not saying that as some sort of raging redneck sort of guy. I'm saying it as someone who's traveled the world and has recently spent several months talking to supposed intellectual and economic elites throughout a good chunk of the globe, who really just want to see America fail because they cannot stand that there is one sole superpower that the whole world relies on. Obviously, America's got a lot of structural issues. Obviously, our politicians are a bunch of bitches. Obviously, we've gotten lazy and complacent. Nobody's denying any of that. But I do think the motivation behind the downgrade is disingenuous, and I do think it's a lot more tied into the fact that the rest of the world has not figured out how to get back on its feet after the financial crisis, and honestly that China is very, very, very scared and trying to exert pressure to benefit their own situation. That's my take on it.
Motivations aside, though, you can't tell me that you think the U.S. is as creditworthy today as it was in, say, the year 2000. I mean, it's night and day. I mean, if the U.S. were a credit card consumer, you can't tell me you don't think the credit score would be lower today than it was a decade ago.
I don't disagree with that at all, but at the same time, you got to remember, you know, you as a guy who was around in the thick of things around that time, 2000 was, you know, you're possibly talking about the apex of American economic power in our country's history. I mean, with the low prices of oil, with, you know, the aftermath of the fallout of the Eastern Bloc fully complete, with everything that was going on pre-9/11, the U.S. was really at its peak in a lot of ways, economically and financially, and I don't think the world today really reflects that situation, so you can make an apples to oranges comparison.
I think if that's the AAA high water mark, we're certainly not there now. I mean, my point is, I don't think the downgrade is unfair. I mean, I think it reflects the reality on the ground. I don't think it says that the U.S. is a bad credit risk. I just think that it says they're not, you know, we're not the sterling credit risk we were a decade ago or 2 decades ago, or frankly at any other time in our history, because this is the first time it's happened in the country's history.
I would say that if we need a downgrade, the whole world needs a lot more of a downgrade. And everything you say is true, but I think when you compare it to what the situation is in the world today, I'd still much rather hold you as that than any other. And so do investors, and so do investors.
I think the action that we're seeing in the U.S. dollar today reflects that. I mean, I would expect the dollar to drop quite a bit more than it is currently. Yeah. The ECB is having to inject money into Spain and Italy today, and that's firming up the U.S. dollar as a supposed flight to quality. The dollar was off quite a bit more a couple hours ago, and now it's firming up a little. But, back to the downgrade and the reaction to it from the White House and everyone else, they're attacking the credibility of Standard & Poor's, which, in my view, is, kind of like calling double dribble on a retarded kid. These guys haven't gotten shit right in 5-6 years, but I guess it's the best of a flawed system. So for the administration to attack them for, attack their credibility, I think is pretty disingenuous when it's clear to anybody in the market that the reality on the ground is different today than it was even 5 years ago. And then when they go and they lean on a guy like Warren Buffett to say, yeah, I mean, if there was a quadruple A rating, I would give the U.S. a quadruple A rating instead of triple A. This is a guy, let's not forget, this is a guy that owns the competitor to S&P. So what do you think he's going to say? I mean, he's going to say that he agrees with him? And beyond that, the guy's a rampant Obama cheerleader and makes no bones about it. I mean, which, for better or worse, he's not the guy you should be listening to when it comes to, whether this ratings downgrade is legitimate or not. What do you think?
Again, when it comes to guys like Buffett and Gates and that whole sector of the universe that I'm nowhere near, they look at things differently. I mean, when a guy can give away 30, 40, 50 billion dollars, his mind just doesn't work the way mine does or yours does. I think as a guy with one foot in the grave who really can't be satisfied by anything earthly anymore, I think he's looking at things from an overall long-term perspective, and I think it comes back to the idea that the entire global economic establishment is fully dependent on America as the infrastructure of that house. You can make an argument for Germany being a pillar, or for China being a pillar, or for India being a floorboard, but it does not stay up without the U.S. And I think that's really more of the point that he was trying to address. I also want to give you Marines a quick little rub and tug here in reference to what I think is really happening with S&P and the U.S. government. You fully know the quote, if you mess with the best, you die like the rest. And I think it's really just open season now on S&P as far as the Feds are concerned. I think this is a slap in the face for them. And I think that long range, if America doesn't default, Standard & Poor's is going to have some really, really serious problems because the U.S. is not going to let this go, just like they didn't let go and still haven't let go of Goldman. They may be slow, they may be, a bully who beats up retarded kids, but once they sink their teeth into you, whether it's, post 9/11 or perestroika or the OPEC embargo, they stay on whoever their perceived opponent is. So, though it may be bullying the retarded kid's going to get his ass kicked.
But S&P is not saying that the U.S. is going to default. That's not what they said at all. The S&P is just saying, look, these guys aren't it's not the same country it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago. It's just not the same. And it's because of these fuckwits in Congress. And it's all about the administration. The S&P report made it perfectly plain. It wasn't really a numbers thing. And the administration came out and said, look, they're off by $2 trillion. They got bad math, and they went back and forth on this whole deal. And what it comes down to is it ain't the math. It's the ass clowns in charge. That's what cost us the credit rating. It was not,
I don't disagree.
It's Obama, it's the Tea Party whack jobs, it's the whole deal that ultimately S&P needs to answer to investors, and, I think they did the responsible thing. I'm not crazy about it, but if you're going to be a ratings agency, your job is to rate stuff.
No. They made the right play. They might have made it many years too late in regards to a lot of things, but hey, balls to them, props to them for having some balls, and let's see if those balls don't get smashed.
Right. Well, we're about 30 minutes away from the Open today, and it is Monday, and it looks like it is going to be a fugly day in the U.S. markets. So we'll see how this stuff reacts to it. Thanks to the lovely and talented Mrs. Braverman, I have 2 whole bottles of Gosling. She just got back from the States and brought those to me. So I got a little mother's milk to get me through.
Please.
What's that?
No more marriage plugs on this show, please.
Well, hey, if you got to be married, she's the one to be married to. I know, I've gone through a few.
Oh.
But that's all I got this week, guys. Keep your heads down and your powder dry for sure today. I think there's going to be some real opportunities that come out of this, but it might get ugly before it gets better.
Yeah, look out for the guy holding his ankles. That's the one you want to be betting against, boys.
And right now, I think that's pretty much everybody. All right, guys, take care, and we'll see you next week on Not Safe for Work.
Be good, fellas.